I always believed families were built on love, but mine was built on quiet competition, fake smiles, and secrets polished to look like tradition. My sister, Alana, was the family's golden child, flawless, graceful, everything my parents ever wanted. And me, I was the extra, the good-enough daughter who filled the space between their pride and their convenience. It was the week of her 10th wedding anniversary when my mom called, her tone light and casual, the way people talk before dropping a bomb. "Oh, by the way, honey, we're having a little get-together for Alana and Jake. Nothing formal, just family." Her voice lingered, hesitant, and that hesitation told me everything. I wasn't invited. The silence stretched heavy. I could hear clinking dishes, maybe her trying to distract herself. I asked, "When is it?" Pretending I didn't notice the lie. "Oh, Saturday, but you don't need to worry about it, sweetheart. You've got work, right?" That's when I realized she'd already made peace with excluding me. I hung up, staring at my phone. A part of me wanted to let it go, to tell myself it didn't matter. But another part, the quiet, observant part that had lived in the shadows of Alana's perfection all my life, whispered, "You're going." No invitation, fine, I didn't need one. You're watching her Retaliation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real, life revenge stories that reveal the truth behind the masks people wear. Saturday came with sunlight too cheerful for what I felt inside. I spent hours getting ready not to impress anyone, but to remind myself I still existed outside their filtered world. A simple black dress, tied hair, and my old car that still rattled every time I turned the key. When I pulled up outside Alana's villa, a house that could easily fit my apartment 3 times over the driveway was full of expensive cars. Laughter floated out from the open windows. The scent of champagne and grilled steak hung in the air. I stepped inside quietly. The room froze for a second, not completely, but just enough for me to notice the flicker of discomfort in my mother's eyes. "Oh, Harper, you made it," she said, the forced smile stretching like a cracked mirror. "Of course," I replied, matching her tone. "You said it was just family." The guests are friends. Her in-laws turned back to their conversations, pretending not to notice the tension. Alana approached, her perfect curls bouncing as she hugged me. The scent of expensive perfume filled my lungs. "You didn't have to come." She whispered against my ear, her voice sugar, coated but sharp underneath. "I know," I said, smiling, "but I wanted to see what a get-together looks like when I'm not on the guest list." Her smile faltered for just a second, and that was enough satisfaction for me to stay. As the evening went on, I moved around quietly, sipping wine, listening to conversations that weren't meant for me. My father barely spoke to me, busy bragging about Alana's husband's promotion. My mother floated between guests like a queen, pretending this fractured family was picture perfect. Then came the moment that would change everything. Alana's son, little Noah, maybe 8 years old, walked up to me with a mischievous grin. "Aunt Harper, can I put something in your bag?" he asked. I laughed softly. "Why, Mom said it's a surprise." He slipped something small and heavy into my backpack before I could react. I frowned but didn't want to make a scene. I zipped the bag shut, pretending nothing happened. But something about his expression, that tiny nervous glance toward Alana, made my stomach twist. After a few minutes, curiosity got the better of me. I went to the hallway, opened my bag slightly, and froze. Inside, wrapped in a napkin, was a small gold bracelet, but not just any bracelet. It had the initials E.M. engraved on it, my grandmother's heirloom. The one that had gone missing last month, the one my parents had subtly blamed me for losing. My chest tightened. I could almost hear my mother's cold voice saying, "You've always been careless, Harper." I glanced back into the living room. Alana was watching me. Her wine glass paused midair when our eyes met. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile predators wear right before they strike. That's when I understood she planned this. They wanted me gone, humiliated, accused, erased for good. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. Then slowly, carefully, I slipped the bracelet out of my bag and tucked it into the pocket of Alana's cream-colored jacket hanging on the coat rack. I zipped my bag shut, walked back into the party, and waited. 30 minutes later, the police showed up. The laughter died. Conversations froze mid-sentence. My father's face went pale as 2 officers stepped through the doorway. "We received a call about a missing item," one officer said. "A gold bracelet belonging to the Monroe family." My mother gasped. "It was stolen. We thought Harper or Mom." Alana cut in quickly, her voice full of rehearsed shock. "Let them check if it's still missing." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. The officers began searching politely the living room, the table, then the coats. When one of them reached into Alana's pocket and pulled out the gold bracelet, the entire room went silent. The look on her face priceless. Her mouth opened but no words came out. My father's confusion turned to anger. My mother's face went ashen. I just stood there calm, my glass of wine trembling slightly in my hand. The officer frowned. "Ma'am, this was reported stolen. Can you explain why it was found in your possession?" I don't know." Alana stammered, her eyes darting to me, then to her son, who was now hiding behind a chair. I didn't move, didn't speak, just let the moment unfold like a carefully written script. It was poetic, the kind of justice that doesn't need words, only timing. When they escorted her to the side for questioning, my mother turned to me, panic in her eyes. "Harper, did you—" I set down my glass and smiled faintly. "You said it was just a get. Together, right. I'm just here to celebrate." That night, after the police left, silence clung to the house like smoke after a fire. Everyone was still in shock except me. I stood in the driveway, feeling the cool air brush my skin while the flashing lights faded into the distance. Inside, I could hear muffled voices, my parents whispering, Alana crying, Jake pacing. I'd never seen them so fractured, so disoriented. For years, they'd built a perfect picture, the loving family, the successful daughter, the obedient second child. But pictures, like masks, always crack when pressure hits. And tonight, that crack had become a fracture. I drove home quietly, replaying every detail. The weight of that gold bracelet still felt like a ghost in my hands. I hadn't planned any of this, not really, but sometimes. Revenge doesn't need planning. Sometimes it only needs opportunity. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the moonlight spilling through my window. My phone buzzed with messages, my mother's short and sharp. "What did you do?" Followed by Alana's desperate one. "You ruined everything, Harper." I didn't reply. Instead, I typed one message to myself, a reminder. Never explain, just watch. By the next morning, the story had spread. In our small town, gossip traveled faster than light. The Monroe's perfect. Daughter had been questioned by police for theft during her own anniversary party. People whispered at the coffee shop, the salon, even at the office where I worked part-time. By noon, Alana called me. "Harper," she began, her voice trembling. "They cleared it up, okay. The police know it was a misunderstanding. But Mom's furious, Dad too. They think you set this up. Did I?" I asked softly. She paused. "You didn't, did you?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "I was just there to celebrate, remember?" She exhaled sharply. "You think this is funny? You embarrassed me, Harper. You embarrassed the whole family." "No," I said, calm and steady. "I just showed up where I was told I didn't belong. The rest, that's all you." There was a long silence before she hung up. I knew then that something had shifted. The power they'd always had, the control, the guilt, the constant reminder that I was the lesser daughter, it had finally cracked. And cracks, once they appear, only grow. 2 days later, my boss called me into his office. "Harper, are you related to the Monroes?" He asked gently. "Yes." He sighed. "I'm sorry to ask this, but there's been talk. The papers mentioned something about theft." I forced a small smile. "I'm not involved, sir, just family drama." He nodded slowly. "I understand. You're one of my best employees. Just keep your head down until it blows over." I thanked him, but inside I burned. Even when they make the mess, I thought, I'm the one cleaning the fallout. That was the moment my revenge stopped being passive. I'd had enough of being the background character in their perfect movie. It was time to write my own ending, and it wouldn't be gentle. Over the next few weeks, I started collecting things, documents, old bank statements, tax forms I'd once filed for Dad when he didn't trust online banking. I remembered the times I'd helped Mom with her business paperwork, when she asked me to just sign here. Because she didn't want to deal with the stress, they thought I was naive, but I'd learned. Every signature, every transaction, every quiet favor was a piece of a puzzle they didn't know I'd been building. And buried inside all that paper was a truth I hadn't expected. My parents weren't just playing favorites, they were hiding something illegal. My father had been using company funds to cover personal expenses. My mother's boutique was registered under both their names, but her charity donations were false receipts, and the villa they'd gifted Alana, bought through the same company account under my father's signature. If this ever came out, they wouldn't just lose their reputation, they'd lose everything. One night, I sat in my car outside their house. The lights were still on. I could see their silhouettes through the curtains arguing. Probably about me. The perfect family was splintering, and I was the invisible hammer behind every crack. My phone buzzed. It was Alana again. "Harper, please, can we talk? Just you and me." I thought about ignoring her, but something in her tone, desperation mixed with guilt, made me curious. Where? I asked. Mom's cafe tomorrow morning before they open. I agreed, not because I trusted her, but because I wanted to see how far she'd fall before realizing she'd lost control. The next morning, the cafe smelled like vanilla and regret. Alana sat by the corner table, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes, a version of her I'd never seen. Harper, she started, voice low. I don't know what happened that night. Noah must have misunderstood. Mom told him to take that bracelet to Grandma's room. He's a kid. I raised a hand. Stop, I don't need excuses. Just tell me one thing, why did you blame me? She looked away. Because it was easy, you never fight back. That line hit harder than I expected, because she was right. I never had, until now. I leaned closer. You said you didn't know what happened, but the truth is you did. You wanted to make sure I'd be the one everyone blamed again. So I just gave you what you wanted, a reputation worth losing. Her eyes filled with tears. Harper, please, Mom and Dad are panicking. Dad said if you say anything to the police, he'll cut me off. I smiled faintly. Then he should start preparing. She stared at me, speechless, you know. I said softly, for years you all made me feel invisible. Now you're seeing what happens when invisible people stop caring. I stood up, dropped a small brown envelope on the table, and walked out. Inside that envelope were copies, just copies of the documents I'd found. The fake charity receipts, the wire transfers, the luxury villa payment. Enough to ruin them in the right hands. That afternoon, my mother called, frantic. Harper, what have you done? Alana's crying, your father's furious. We tried to call the lawyer, but Mom. I interrupted, my tone calm. Don't worry, I haven't done anything. Yet. She fell silent. I just wanted you to understand what it feels like. I continued to have something precious hanging over your head. To be treated like you don't belong, now you'll live with that. You wouldn't destroy your own family, she cried. I smiled, you already did that for me. And I hung up, days turned into weeks. My parents' boutique faced an audit. Rumors about financial irregularities started spreading. Alana's husband stopped posting their luxury vacations online. The facade was crumbling beautifully slow, poetic, inevitable, and I didn't lift a finger. I didn't need to. I'd already set the dominoes. All I had to do was watch them fall. But something unexpected happened. A month later, I received a letter not from them, but from the police department. It wasn't about the bracelet. It was about a property, my grandmother's old house. Apparently, before she passed, she'd left it to me. Not Alana, not my parents, me. They had kept the will hidden for years. I sat on the porch steps of my small apartment, reading the letter again and again, tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't about the money. It was about the truth finally finding its way home. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, and as I looked up at the fading sunset, I whispered to myself, this isn't revenge, this is restoration. The rain poured against the window as Harper Quinn stood before the glass wall of her apartment, her reflection faintly glowing in the dim city light. The city outside shimmered cold, indifferent, loud, but inside, everything was still. Her fingers rested on the edge of a thick folder, the one she had built piece by piece over the past month. Inside were documents, statements, recordings, everything that could dismantle her family's fake image forever. It had been a month since the anniversary party, the night her sister, Jessica, had planted that strange envelope in her backpack, hoping to frame her. But Harper had played her move quietly, like a master chess player. When the police arrived that night, Harper had already slipped the evidence back into Jessica's own jacket. Watching Jessica's shocked face as the officers questioned her had been the first time in years Harper had felt control. Since then, everything had changed. Her parents had tried to manage the scandal, pretending it was all a misunderstanding. They called, left voicemails, even sent her flowers. Harper didn't respond. Instead, she focused on her quiet operation, pulling every loose thread in the fabric of lies her family had woven around themselves. Her father's company's hidden debts, her mother's charity fund, secretly used for personal expenses, Jessica's fraudulent sponsorship deals. Harper uncovered them all. Now she stood on the edge of a new storm, not one caused by them, but by her. She exhaled slowly, placing the folder in her bag, and walked out into the rain. The cold bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. She wasn't running from her past anymore, she was walking straight into its heart. The next morning, the Quinn family mansion was in chaos. Harper didn't have to be there to see it. She could imagine the scene perfectly. Jessica screaming at her husband, her father barking orders at the PR team, her mother crying on the phone with reporters. Because that morning, the first wave of truth had hit. Dozens of emails had gone public, internal records showing misuse of funds, manipulations, and a family that lived on deceit. Harper had sent them anonymously to every major media outlet in the city. Her phone buzzed endlessly calls, messages, threats. She turned it face down on the table and kept sipping her coffee, the corner of her lips curving into a quiet smile. Revenge wasn't about shouting or fighting. It was about watching people fall under the weight of their own lies. 2 days later, her father finally came to see her. The same man who once laughed when she said she wanted to study business, telling her she was too soft. The same man who said her dreams were cute. He stood now, drenched and trembling, outside her apartment door. "Harper," he said, his voice cracking, "we need to talk." She opened the door just wide enough to see his face. "About what? The truth, or the lies you told to keep me small? Don't do this," he pleaded. "You're destroying your family." She tilted her head. Family. The word almost made her laugh. "You mean the people who never once treated me like one?" He had no answer. For the first time, her father looked small, defeated. She didn't slam the door. She just said softly, "Go home, Dad. There's nothing left for you here," and closed it gently. That night, Harper went through her old photos, birthdays, family trips, those fake smiles that hid years of coldness. She realized something important. Revenge wasn't the ending. It was just the doorway to peace. She had spent her whole life trying to earn their love. Now she didn't need it. Days turned into weeks. The Quinn family name dissolved in the media. Jessica's brand deals collapsed. Their company filed for bankruptcy. But Harper didn't gloat. She didn't post, didn't brag, didn't even talk about it. She just moved forward. One afternoon, as she walked through Central Park, she spotted a small girl sitting alone on a bench, crying softly. Harper stopped, knelt beside her, and asked what was wrong. "My mom forgot to pick me up," the girl sniffled. She said she was too busy. Harper smiled gently, handing her a tissue. "Sometimes people forget the most important things," she said quietly, "but that's not your fault." The little girl smiled weakly, and Harper walked away realizing, perhaps for the first time, that she could still be kind. Her pain didn't have to define her. Later that evening, she sat by her window, watching the city lights again, but this time she wasn't looking for vengeance or validation. Just peace. She opened her laptop, began typing an email to a charity that helped young women start businesses. "I'd like to donate anonymously," she wrote, "for the ones who never got their chance." Her reflection in the screen looked stronger now, calmer, wiser, whole. The storm was finally over. And as she closed her laptop, Harper whispered to herself, "They took my trust. I took their masks now. We're even." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline not as a threat, but as applause for a woman who had learned that truth burns brighter than revenge.